Go ahead, Rebecca.
Great. Good morning, everyone. So today we are talking about match requirements. We're going to do an overview and then of all the different funding sources that require match, as well as the eligible funds examples, and then supporting documentation needed to be submitted when you submit a DOH funding application. Oh, and just to clarify, I am one of the housing development specialists on the team, and we have some others on the line as well as asset managers who are here to answer any of your questions. So as I mentioned in the agenda, we'll go over these items. We will be focusing today on match requirements for both federal and state funding sources, and so we'll break that down further in the presentation. So first off, we're going to talk about what is a match requirement. It is a local financial or in-kind contribution as a project source. So when we're looking at the project, it's looking at that community investment, that local community investment, what is at their level, and they're committed to the project. We're also looking at regulations that both state and federal funding regulations require certain match. And those often comes with specifics to them that we will get into. And then additionally, what we're looking at is the amount of match, and any matching contribution generally makes an application more competitive. So today we'll be looking at two sources of match, one federal source, HOME, and one state source, our HDG funds. I'm gonna, before going into more information, I do want to let you know that at any point during your application, if you have questions about match, we strongly advise you to reach out to your housing development specialist for your region, and you can discuss specifics. So this will just be an overview today, but every project is different. So we do ask you to reach out and clarify with them. So first we'll talk about federal source, HOME program, and the match requirement there. So this is a federal funds match liability, and the regulation 24 CFR 92.218 to 92.222 spells it out if you want to read the specifics there. And basically it requires that participating jurisdictions provide match in an amount equal to no less than 25% of the total HOME funds drawn down from the project. So in that statement, what I want to point out is participating jurisdictions. Both states and localities that receive HOME funds are known as participating jurisdictions. So for us, we're going to look at the state as the PJ in this presentation and what the state liability is, as well as your projects in the state HOME funds that are going into your project. Then additionally, any match is based on a permanent local non-federal contribution. So that's kind of a quick way to think about it when you're trying to figure out what match, in what sources in your project equal match. So HOME regulations actually come with a pretty long list of specifics of eligible forms of match. Overall, it is non-federal sources. So city, county, foundation, nonprofit, private sources, those all qualify because they are non-federal, but then we drill down into a little more specifics. So match can be looked at as actual like financial contribution or the value or cost of specific project funds or services. So for HOME, that is cash or cash equivalents, waived taxes, fees, or charges. And a good example of this that we've seen is waiver of building permit fees. Additionally, donated land or real property, on-site and off-site infrastructure, bond financing, and it's the percentage of these proceeds. We can go into specifics about that. Donations of materials, equipment, labor, or professional services. Then it also allows for sweat equity supportive services, so contributions if they're non-federal supportive services contributions, or home buyer counseling. So there's definitely a variety of ways to meet match through HOME. We wanted to point out non-eligible forms. So any federal cash sources or federally derived sources. So example, CDBG funds. If your project receives CDBG from a local town, local city, that is not considered match. LIHTC funds, your tax credits, those are not considered match. Federal vouchers. So again, it's a great way to think about it is just federal or federally derived sources. Those are not eligible match for home. Additionally, owner equity is not match. So although cash contributions are okay from maybe a foundation or other source, from investors or sponsors directly in the project, those are not considered match. Seller financing is not match. Deferred developer fee is not match. We're going to go into a couple examples. And these are based on examples we've seen around the state as well. So we're going to, hopefully that gives you a little more understanding of it. So if you're a private developer and you undertake an acquisition rehab tax credit multifamily project, and let's say you go through the application process and receive $1 million in home funds from the state of Colorado, you incur a $250,000 match obligation. That's that 25%. So the project comes in and it received $4 million of tax-exempt bond financing as a project source. Home outlines within its regulations how much of those bond proceeds can be considered. For this project, it's considered a new construction. So the requirement under home says 50% of the loan amount made from bond proceeds to a multifamily affordable housing project will qualify as match. Thus, your $2 million more than exceeds the $250,000 match obligation. So you definitely met that match there. Another example that we've seen is donated equipment and labor. So sometimes you might not have the bond financing or the local contribution. So there's other ways to do it. It can be in kind in different ways. So in this example, a single family homeownership project contains 20 units. The state contributes $500,000 in home funds. And then in this program, it requires the demolition of blighted buildings. In discussions with the project, the town now provides $125,000 in donated equipment and labor, demolition labor, dumpsters, trucks, dumping fees, etc. And those qualify as eligible match for that 25% for home. Another example we've seen is waiver of taxes, fees, and charges. So in this example, ABC City Housing Authority develops 75-unit affordable housing rental project. And the home investment amount is $728,000 from the state. So the match requirement for home, that 25%, is $182,000. Because it's a housing authority, it forgoes, or the city forgoes its real estate taxes of $20,000 a year for 10 years, credited at the start of each project. Now, using a treasury rate for a 10-year note of 1.75%, we can figure out what would be the present value of every year for 10 years, that $20,000. So when it's calculated out using that treasury rate, the net present value of waived fees is $182,024. So that just meets the match obligation. This is definitely a more complex one that involves multiple different groups, but it is another way to indicate match of those kind of the value of waived taxes or fees or et cetera. So that was all about our federal match requirement and the funding sources that require match from our federal funds. We additionally have a match liability for our state funds, our housing development grant funds. These are HDG funds, so I'll be talking about them like that. They're state funds and they do come with match. The regulation is CRS 2432-705. And actually stated here is almost what it says in the regulation. It requires that funds to public and private agencies must be at least equally matched from a non-state source. unless sufficient local sources are not available because of other essential public functions, and must be for providing energy efficient housing to low and moderate income households. So the point being here is that it's equally matched from a non-state source. So where home was a non-federal source, HDG match is a non-state source. Eligible forms of match, again, non-state source. And just like home, you can do the value or cost of specific project funds or services. So this can be cash equivalent from owners, foundations, nonprofits, etc. Waived taxes, fees, or charges, donated land or real property, on-site and off-site infrastructure, bond financing, tax credits, which is different from home because you can use federal sources because they're non-state, or other federal sources. Donations of materials, equipment, labor, professional services. And then again, those sweat equity, supportive services, or home buyer counseling. In those kind of last grouping, I remind you to make sure that they're non-state sources because they have to qualify as being non-state. So HDG does come with some non-eligible forms, state cash sources and state-derived sources. So some of the examples we put were kind of state vouchers. There aren't too many of those, but they are non-eligible. State tenant supportive services, these are non-eligible match for HDG. Owner equity, again, from cash contributions from investors or sponsors, seller financing, or deferred developer fee. Next, we'll go into a couple examples. So an HDG example of match. So a private developer undertakes an acquisition and rehabilitation LIHTC multifamily project, and they receive $650,000 in HD funds from the state of Colorado. That incurs a one-for-one match of $650,000, and that's its obligation. So the developer applies and receives City XYZ's grant from its local affordable housing trust fund for $650,000. This meets the one-for-one match obligation. So this is kind of a non-state grant example of both a contribution from the local municipality and the state in an effort to build the project. In this example, we're going to talk about donated land and waived fees. So for HDG, this nonprofit developer has a new construction rental project with 25 total units, income levels between 30% to 60% AMI. The state invests $375,000 in HD funds, and the town XYZ donates the land for the project. So the match requirement is $375,000. An appraisal comes in for the land that's $350,000. So it's just a little bit less. Since the appraisal comes in below the total match amount, then town XYZ may include waived fees of $25,000 as additional match. Just another way to kind of figure out layering different match values and sources into the project to make sure that match requirement is met. I haven't seen any questions in the chat. Am I missing any? I just want to make sure.
Haven't been any questions yet.
Okay, great. So lastly, we're going to talk about supporting documentation for DOH. So first, we'll kind of in the documentation, the question is what match documentation is acceptable to submit with the DOH funding application. So our preference would definitely be an award letter if you've already met that match. Certain municipalities may have a one-time application per year. So maybe that award letter has already been received. Great, submit that with your application. If not, a letter of commitment from the funding source or the funding group, whether it's a city or nonprofit or et cetera, is a great alternative if you don't have the award letter yet. A page of agreement indicating funding source contribution. Maybe that's a page of a agreement for land donation, and you can supply that to us and it indicates the amount of land donation, when it's coming in, etc. That's another great supporting documentation. The appraisal, we generally ask for the appraisal anyways, but that is for land or building or etc. That is definitely a great way to show what the value is of an asset that you might be using for match. Another example for waivers is copies of waivers. Additionally, in any of the supporting documentation, an official letterhead and official from the official funding source is much preferred. Not an email communication or just a quick write-up, but something official that you can supply indicating that the funding source that'll be used as match. These are what's submitted to us, the housing development specialists who underwrite the applications. And then additionally, after you've been awarded funding, you'll under active management, you'll then most likely be working with your respective Division of Housing asset manager to ensure documentation submission and compliance. And we have different specialties in our asset management division. There's home specialties and HDG specialties, and they can assist you better with what documentation works best for those funding sources. And that is a great way to just keep the conversation going and assist you through the process if you're new to it. Otherwise, we could open up time for questions. And then I also want to point out on this page that it has our housing development specialist broken up into region. So you can look on the left and find the contact information for that. I've also posted the link to our regional contact information down at the bottom. That link also connects to the asset managers who specialize in the different funding sources. If you have, so we can have team conversations or et cetera, but so you know who they are in the event you're working with them and need their contact information as well. So glad to open it up for discussion.
And feel free to type your questions into the chat box or use the raise hand feature if there are any questions right now. Spencer.
Hi, Rebecca and Uriel. I've raised my hand. Hi, I'm Spencer, Housing Development Specialist. I just wanted to emphasize that local contribution is always welcome, and just point out for we talked about the non-federal match requirements for the home funds, but I don't want to discourage anyone. If you have local home, the local contribution is always seen as a good thing. So please, don't be discouraged, and we could work with you to, identify any one of those other forms of match that would count as a match for our home funds.
I haven't seen any questions pop up. So we do have a few quiz questions here at the end, just to get a pulse. Go ahead, Rebecca, and I will launch it when you're ready.
Oh, do I do the quiz questions? I didn't know.
You gotta switch the,
Stop sharing?
no, go to the last slide.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay. So the poll should be launched. And in this example, does this meet the minimum requirement for match? Yes, no, or still not sure. So I'll keep this open for about 60 seconds. give it about 30 more seconds. We have 8 votes and 27 people on this call. So. Ten seconds. Any last guesses in there? Stop the poll. Looks like majority of everyone said yes, which is correct. And we kind of gave away the answer in the slide. So one more question for you all. And it will be, if you have HCG funds from DOH for a project, which sources would qualify as a local match? We have other federal sources received, donated land for the project, waived fees, taxes, and permits, or all of the above. Right, about 15 more seconds to get those last minute questions in. Okay, great, everyone said all of the above, which is the correct answer. So good job. We're wanting to do more quiz questions in our webinar, so we wanted to start off soft to begin. Well, I think that ends our presentation. Do you have anything else to add, Rebecca, or any of our development specialists or asset managers on the call?
No, last couple of points that I'd put in would be, again, as you're filling out your DOH application or have questions, you often don't know what funding source you're going to be receiving. So definitely contact your housing development specialist here and find out if match requirement will be required and have those conversations. We're more than willing to help you assess what can be equal for match or et cetera. So do reach out.
And I just issued one last poll just to get some feedback. We do want to make sure our webinars are helpful in providing knowledge, newer knowledge, and are being a resource and tool that you can go back to use. So we just want to make sure that our webinars are being helpful to you all and ensuring compliance and the success of your projects. If you have recommendations for any future webinars, feel free to reach out to myself or Jennifer. She's not here today, but we're the ones communicating about the webinars. And other than that, thank you all for joining us today. It was great turnout and we appreciate it.